Hi there, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Chatting with the Lightkeeper. As always, I'm Edward, and we are here to talk about all things kinktastic, BDSM, DS, just plain kinky things, and maybe sometimes even dive into poly stuff, which I will, openly admit, poly is not a strong suit of myself. But just like everything else, it's amazing to learn about, even if it's not in one strong suit. So that's one of the, I guess, the beauties and joys of doing the podcast is I get to experience and expose myself to new things through talking to you, or get better at old things, see things in new lights, all that good stuff by doing this fun little podcast. And this week in my world, it's a long holiday weekend here in the States. It's Memorial Day weekend. And the beautiful thing is that I have today off. It's the holiday Monday. And because of the long weekend, I've got a bunch of things planned, a bunch of things going on, a lot of little landscaping projects going on. And thankfully, today's Monday and I had the day off, and the weather turned kind of not super cooperative for doing outside projects. And I say good because I kind of sort of had forgotten about recording the podcast. And, the podcast gets released Tuesday, bright and early morning, New York City time. And it's Monday afternoon, so had the weather been cooperative, I probably would have forgotten to record the episode until tomorrow. And because in my head I'm not working today, so I was thinking it was Sunday, not Monday. So that's, I guess, the good side of having kind of little on and off rain type thing going on is that I'm making some great progress on my reading and also some great progress over the weekend on my exciting new project, which isn't quite ready for me to announce. However, my goal is by the time we chat again next week, then I'll be able to share the exciting news with you. My goal is to have my part of the project done by June 1st, and we'll see how it goes for me to get my stuff done by the 1st of June. Uh, so I've done well. I am learning tons, and I'm also learning to not be so shy about annoying my friends who have more expertise in a certain area than myself and saying, hey, enlighten me, walk me through this, explain it to me like I'm 10 because I'm not getting the explanations, understanding them as though I'm an adult. So try the 10-year-old explanation for me this time. Things like that I'm getting really good at with this project, which is it's refreshing and humbling to have to ask for help and then ask for the help that you've gotten to have more help to translate that help. So that's kind of been my excitement going on, and again, it's keeping me busy and out of proverbial trouble. Not that I'm ever actually in trouble, but you know, nothing really super exciting and fun other than digging into my project when I have downtime, which has cut into my reading time, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Anyway, speaking of all that talk of time and what's been occupying my time, pretty much everybody out there leads a pretty busy life. And our busy lives sometimes make it hard when we're in a relationship or even a playship with somebody to find the time to get together and, um, for lack of a better term, get kinky, get our kink on. Um, Sometimes it takes a little thought and a little planning to arrange that. We're busy, work, family, you name it. You know, doing some light landscaping to trying to learn new skills and throw together a project that you wanted to do for a long time, in my case, and just getting around to doing it. All that takes time. And that time sort of takes us away if we're in like I said, from having those wonderful kinktastic things going on. And so many people tend to think that, like, BDSM play is natural and it's spontaneous and it just sort of, it just sort of happens. A look can trigger a BDSM scene to happen. And while it can, and it's wonderful when it works, that happens, that spontaneity just happens and things come to life. Uh, I think that's kind of our romantic side, romancing how our kink sort of takes flight. The truth of the matter is, more often than not, we actually have to plan our times, plan the times when we get our kink on, plan what's going to happen. I know it doesn't sound as fun as the spontaneity stuff, and some ways it kind of takes maybe a little bit of the fun out of it to sort of pre-plan the adventure, but we need to do it because of the pressures and time constraints we do have in our lives. And the other thing that planning, why it's important, especially, is if you're with a newer partner. The planning part of it all, um, and by planning, I'm not talking about sitting down on the couch, after say going out for a romantic dinner, and now you're back, and okay, now let's plan to get our kink on, and that can happen. But sometimes it's best if you're with a newer partner to sort of have the conversation long before date night. So you don't sort of have that flush of desire, which might lower our inhibitions or make us more agreeable than what we might be had we, say, had the conversation on Wednesday night and rather than on Saturday night for date night. So it takes some time to talk about. We have to sort of plan the scene, plan where we're going to do it, what room, where, how, what props are going to get used, what we want the atmosphere to be, how we're going to do it. And then we also need to plan the aftercare. And from most of what I probably said, there are some of you out there who are thinking, well, this is all the dominant. The dominant needs to take care of all that. The dominant is, they're large and they're in charge and they should just take care of it. And perhaps that's logical, but at the same time, submissives, you have a voice. And if there's something that you want, you desire, a twist that you want to put on something, you need to speak up. Or sometimes, even perhaps, maybe your dominant has been um, busy at work, or busy with kids, or busy with just life, whatever it is. Sometimes, even though you're the submissive partner, doesn't mean you can't say, shoot your dominant a text and say, hey, Saturday night, how about we do this? And I'll have it all set up and blah, 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 blah. And so during the playtime, obviously everyone's in their proper role. But the submissive sort of did all the groundwork and homework. And it doesn't mean that they're any less submissive. In fact, if somebody is a service orientated submissive doing the prep work and setting the scene and setting the stage and getting it all set up, I mean, really that kind of sort of jams with somebody who enjoys being of service, especially on the submissive side. So it's not infringing on anybody's dominance. So when you're talking about planning a little kinktastic playtime, sit down with your partner or partners and discuss what the goal is. What do you know, where do we want to end up? The kinktastic train is here at the station, and where are we gonna end up? What do we expect on this ride, and what don't we want to have on the ride, and all that good stuff. And it comes back to negotiation. Sort of those meatloaf things. I'll do this, but I won't do that. Um, Especially with a newer partner, even though you've probably covered it before, you need to cover it several times or have a refresher. Maybe it's been 6 months since you've covered, limits, safe words, boundaries, all that good stuff. It's just good to have those conversations every once in a while, even if there's nothing new to report. Having the little short refresher on, hey, I like to do this and I will not do that. Um, and of course, when we have the conversation about negotiation and we're communicating, um, everything must be consented to. There's no bullying, there's no coercing, there's no, none of that. Well, you did this before. Why won't you do it now? That sort of thing. That all doesn't happen. Consent has to be freely given, and the person giving the consent has to understand what's going to happen. Um, all that good stuff that goes with consent. And of course, it's revocable, meaning anybody can say no, stop, safe word, safe gesture at any time, and everything comes to a complete halt. Um, and then when we're going to sort of play in BDSM, in a way, it's role play. Even if we're not playing roles, we're just being ourselves. In a way, it's role play. We're setting the scene. I mean, that's kind of why scene comes in as the perfect word for this, because in a way we're crafting our own little kinky um adult little film that we are starring in. And so we are really creating a script, that has a beginning, a middle, a climax, and hopefully everybody gets there together, and an ending. That's what we're doing. And speaking of climax and getting there together, um, I went to school at a university in Michigan, and on the way there, on the interstate, there is a town that you pass going from my hometown to where I went to school, and I can remember it was the first time going, so I was, incredibly nervous moving in to the dorms for my first, adventure of really kind of being on my own. And there's the sign with an exit saying in 1 mile, here's the exit for this town. And the name of the town is Climax. There is a Climax, Michigan. Honest to goodness. And as we get there, there's the sign for the, 1 mile away, and then we get to where the exit is. And I'm in the back seat, and my parents are in the front seat. And my dad looks at my mom and he says, quote, "Look, dear, we got here together for once." And I'm just like, it was just one of those major, even though I was by myself, like teenage embarrassment things. Now I look back and it's quite comical to me. So that's where that little comment about getting there together comes from. My first ride off to college, moving in, was the joys of, look, we finally got there together. But anyway, think of your scene as exactly that. You are crafting everything from how it's going to start to what goes on to that climax, and perhaps you get there together, or perhaps one of you has more climaxes than the other, and however it works for you. And then of course the end. And the end isn't just the end of playtime. The end includes aftercare as well, but it's all there. And a quick note about the end with aftercare: if you're with a partner that is your loving, romantic, or maybe not even romantic, maybe you're just partners, in life. There's not any romance there, which happens in the BDSM lifestyle more often than perhaps you would think. But it does happen. But if you're with your partnered, aftercare is sort of an expected thing. But if you are with, and this is where it gets confusing, um, if you are with a casual playmate, a friend with benefit, or just, maybe you're not even friends, you're just benefits. In those cases, the aftercare part needs to be negotiated just like everything else on the scene. The limits, the safe words, what's going to happen, how much aftercare is provided, how long it's provided, what is expected of aftercare, all of that, especially in a playful, playing type scene, where there's no emotional connections or no long-term connection there, needs to be negotiated. It's just shouldn't be something that is expected in that. So another thing to understand when we're kind of doing the scenes, perhaps you've seen those TV shows where they have like outtakes and bloopers from famous movies and TV shows. Understand that this is just sort of like the movies. There's going to be, in reality, there's going to be, you know, there's going to be bloopers, there's going to be outtakes, and mistakes are going to happen. So don't expect, even though you've worked hard and planned the scene, that everything is going to go according to the script, because reality, unfortunately, doesn't follow a script. And sometimes it, you know, sort of has a way of really kind of turning on us. So expect that. Don't expect everything to be perfect and amazing, because life is not always that. In fact, life's oftentimes beauty comes in the imperfections. So the first part is setting the scene, and when we're setting the scene, the first thing we've got to decide is where are we gonna put on our little kingtastic adult theater, if you will. It's always, of course, important to choose a safe and comfortable location. As far as privacy goes, many people prefer to do and get their kink on in private. However, if you are going to be adventurous, make sure that and let's say you're looking for an audience, you're an exhibitionist looking for an audience. Consider, a lifestyle play party or an acceptable venue, perhaps a sex club or a public, well, not necessarily public, but available dungeon in your local in-person community. It's very important that you do it in the proper place. Obviously, doing it on the balcony of a hotel room can be a great fantasy, but it might not be the greatest thing, should your hotel neighbors notice what's going on the balcony. So just bear in mind and make sure to, choose the right setting, whether it's a bedroom, a dungeon, or kitchen table, wherever it is. And when you're also looking at the location and you're doing your planning, think about like the little things. Like closing the window shades, perhaps, or a mistake that I humorously once did. I was unlike today here in my fair city, it was a beautiful, warm spring day, and I did close the blinds. However, I forgot to actually close the windows, so there was a nice breeze going through the room when we played. However, my submissive at the time, she was, how shall I say this, rather loud. And so I was playing golf with my neighbors a couple days later, and I was ribbed for 18 holes about the noises that came out of the house. So, yes, please make sure to close the windows as well as the blinds, or your neighbors may understand what's going on. And thankfully, I had understanding neighbors who preferred to tease me about it rather than cause other issues, which could have happened. So, yeah, I would settle for the teasing aspect over other things, but make sure to, when you're, picking the location, you're keeping little things like that in mind. Also, don't forget the atmosphere, whether it's, the right music in the background, the right lighting, the right temperature. And, in my neck of the woods, temperature is very important because in the wintertime here, it's very cold, and in the summer, it can get very hot. So, temperature plays a role in it because sometimes when it's super duper hot, we can feel not like doing doing a lot of things, including getting our kink on. Same with it being super cold. So, it's very important to think about temperature. And also, since, let's face it, when we get our kink on, sometimes a lot of that is clothing optional, shall we say. So consider that when you're considering the temperature. Doesn't need to be a few degrees, perhaps warmer, since we are going to potentially be without our clothing, or do we need to have it a couple degrees cooler because as our scene goes along, things are going to heat up and get hot. All of that sort of needs to be considered so we can be comfortable. And speaking of lighting, candles are great, wonderful, romantic things, right? Candles are great. Just remember, sometimes with BDSM, there can be things being swung like a flogger, a paddle, Those types of things can be sort of flying through the air with the greatest of ease. And so it's very important that if you're going to use candles for that romantic ambient lighting, that you do so and the candles are placed in places where they are not going to get accidentally knocked over. You don't want to burn your house down because you were swinging the paddle, knocked the candle, and it went on the floor. You didn't notice it because you were, you know, in rapture with what's going on. So just be very careful with that sort of thing to make sure that all the elements um, are there to give it the right mood, but also are safe. And when we are also planning out our scene, um, when we've got the scene planned, have the props and tools kind of all handy. Um, it may not seem romantic to have them sort of all lined up on the end table next to the bed, perhaps. But it really is ideal rather than in the middle of the play going, "Oh, wait a second, hold on. I thought I thought the wooden spoon was right here in the drawer. It's not here in the drawer. Let me run to the kitchen and see if it's in the kitchen drawers or whatever it is. Oh, I thought the rope or I thought the restraints were right here. They're not." Um, we're so sometimes concerned about setting the mood so perfectly that little things like that can interrupt us. Like, the one you really need to get somewhere in a hurry, that's when you can't find your car key. It never fails that's when the key fob disappears, is when you actually need to go somewhere. So just, sort of have everything sort of laid out, ready to go. And since you've got everything laid out and it's ready to go, make sure that it's in working order, that they're clean, if they're ropes, that they've been conditioned, or that they're ready. They're not in a weakened state or kinked or all that other good stuff. And if you're going to play with rope or bondage, safety shears, safety shears, safety shears, have those out. Don't just have them in their secret hiding location, but have them out with the rope so you can easily grab them should as I've explained before, where I made the mistake of rush tying knots rather than doing proper knots for ease to undo, ended up having to cut some silk scarves off my submissive, um, because, well, let's just face it, she had to pee. I couldn't get them undone in time, so rather than have an accident, it was just cut the scarves off. And the next day, I tripped to Macy's to replace what I had to destroy. So have whatever safety equipment you need, whether it's a first aid kit, safety shears, whatever it is, have it handy. And this is something I never would have thought of in my younger years. But now that I am older and actually have some friends, for example, let's say your partner is diabetic, and perhaps occasionally they require insulin. Um, Part of when you lay out the scene, have their potential medication for whatever it is, have that be out and right there. So if it's needed, there's not a looking all over for it. It's a, okay, your sugar is, you need to do this, and here it is, whether it's a shot of insulin or it's a shot of orange juice, whatever it is, whatever the case may be, have that laid out as part of it as well. So it's right there and handy. So if there's if you or your partner or partners have any medical concerns or potential issues, have that just be addressed right there as well when you're setting up for all the fun and games. Now, when it comes to the fun and games themselves, um, it can be very easy, especially if you're excitable. I know when I was well, I can still be excitable. Definitely still excitable. I haven't lost that childlike ability to be very excitable. And with that comes the need that I know I need to sort of catch my breath, take a breath, slow down. And it's very important in a scene to make sure that we're taking breaths, that we're slowing down, that we're not ramping things up too quickly. We're letting the anticipation, if you will, build up. Don't just sort of fly in there and jump in there with the intensity, expecting it to be the intensity of, say, mid scene or towards the climax, towards a climax. You have to build to that. And while we are playing, we also, it does, once again, it doesn't necessarily matter your role, but pay attention to your partner's cues, including their nonverbal cues, which, if you are newer as partners, it can mean asking unsexy questions like, "How are you doing? Is this okay? Would you like me to go faster, harder, softer?" All of those things need to, especially when we're new, get asked and watch because yes, if you've been together with your partner for a few years or many years, you can really read their nonverbal cues and you may not be you can know by how they are responding whether to go harder, faster, slower, harder, softer, faster, all those good stuff because you've been together, you've learned their cues. And that goes the same, whether they're dominant or submissive, you've learned your partner's nonverbals and how they respond. Um, but if you haven't and you haven't been together that long, it does take communication, using our words to express it. And I know in the movies, it doesn't, people don't do that. In the movies, everything just flows along fabulously and great. The reality is that we need to make sure that the intensity is right so everyone involved stays comfortable and has an enjoyable experience. And once again, during play, I can't stress this enough. Safe words and safe gestures, they are so super important. Make sure to practice them with your partner if you are new and entering what you hope will be a long-term partnership. Practice them. Practice saying them. When you are, engaged in a little play, having a little bit of a wonderful little rump in the hay or on the kitchen table, wherever it is that you are enjoying playing. Say your safe word if you're submissive. See what happens. Does the dominant stop? And if they stop, is there immediate concern? How are you doing? Or are they upset that you safe worded? And if you're a dominant, go ahead and say your safe word. See what happens. And dominants, you need to have one too. Maybe, for simple reasons. Maybe you noticed grandma coming up the walkway with fresh baked cookies and you're on the living room floor in a unique position that grandma doesn't need to see, and you need to hustle and quickly move. Or perhaps you are. If anybody will remember Sanford and Son, but thinking you're having a massive heart attack, and you need to get your submissives attention in their headspace so that they can help you. But whatever it is, practice those safe words, practice those safe gestures, so that you can understand them when they're done. You know that your partner is going to respect them. And you know that they're going to be greeted with, "Are you okay?" rather than, "How dare you stop? I'm, a minute from an orgasm." So practice your safe words, practice your safe gestures, know them, understand them. And once again, if you are with a new or brand new partner to you, and they say things like, "No, stop," go ahead and stop and then check in. "Are you okay?" Because sometimes, let's face it, BDSM, people can say no, stop, and they don't want you to stop. But the right thing to do until you have built trust and time with your partner so that you understand when they're saying no, stop, and it's the playful no, stop versus yes, I want you to stop because I'm uncomfortable. And sometimes when we're new to somebody, we can forget our safe words. We can feel uncomfortable, or sometimes our brain can just default to saying no or stop versus saying pineapple or red or yellow. So when you're new, respect the no's, respect the stops, respect the I'm uncomfortable or not so hard. Uh, Take all of those literally when you are with a new or newer partner. And then you can obviously, over time, you will build trust and connection and be able to understand the difference between a playful, "Oh, that hurts," and a legitimate, oh, that hurts. But until that time comes around, don't assume and immediately treat it as though what they said is what they actually mean. So that is what I will have to say on that. And so let's say our playtime goes fantastic. We have a great time. You reach climax at the perfect time for you and your partners, however that is, and there's no need for safe words or safe gestures. Everything just went fantastic, and it's all over. Um, Now here comes the wonderful thing called aftercare. And I've always believed that when you're planning a scene, you start backwards. You don't start with the I'm going to tie my submissive up and hang them from the chandelier over the kitchen table and invite my closest kinky friends over for dinner while they're hanging naked above us so we can all admire the naked submissive over the table. Before you plan that all out, plan the aftercare. Start with the aftercare. Plan the aftercare, and then you plan your scene, or you come up with a plan for the aftercare, you plan your scene, and then you look at your aftercare plans and see whether you need to adjust them. Maybe the scene is more intense than normal, so you need to factor in some additional aftercare. Whatever it is, but the aftercare gets planned with the same intensity as the scene because it's the aftercare that really helps us because during the scene, doesn't matter your role, our brains release our feel good chemicals. And when the scene ends, our brains sort of come down out of that happy, chemically induced place that they were. And the aftercare is what sort of keeps us balanced, keep us from, being up riding that high wave right to climax when the wave crashes down. And the aftercare is what keeps us balanced and keeps us floating. So it's very important that we plan the aftercare. We know what we like from our partner, what we want from our partners, whether it's cuddling, whether it's hydration. Okay, maybe hydration isn't something that we want. We may not want to drink water, but hydration is always important. So it's very important to make sure that our partner or partners or we're all staying hydrated. And, whatever it is, whether it's the cuddling, making sure that we're staying hydrated and drinking the water that we don't want to have, or whether it's we're having quiet time, or whether aftercare is cuddles and conversation. Whatever it is that is needed, we tailor the aftercare to our partner's needs so that not only did we just have an absolutely orgasmic experience, but we are coming down from our orgasmic experience to a nice soft landing so we don't have drop, whether it's dom drop or sub drop afterwards. And the final thing that goes along with having a scene after the aftercare, or perhaps it can start during the aftercare, depending on what works for you, is to have a debriefing. Because let's face it, when we are doing scenes, perhaps we're exploring a fantasy, or perhaps the scene went a little bit, off script in a different way that led to a fantasy, or it led to something where it's like, I thought I'd like that, but I didn't. But the debrief is where you sit down with your partner and you talk about what went on. You know, did, I really liked when you did this, you know, and then of course there's the opposite. I really didn't like when you did that, or, we've been doing we've been doing spanking with the wooden spoon every scene for the last month that we've done together. We've used the wooden spoon. Can we change that up? Whatever it is, it's an open and honest time to talk about what went well, what could be improved, how things feel. Maybe a new fantasy started to come to life while you were in the middle of it, and perhaps share the little bits that have come to life. And your partner may have had little bits of something new come to life, and it can spark a whole new road to explore together. But the debrief is finding out how it went, and these are the times when you learn more and more about your partner, and and it helps bring you together, even though it may sound mechanical to talk about um, when we get our kink on in terms like that. Did you like it when I did this? Did you like it when I did that? Oh, you didn't like that? Okay. I know it doesn't sound fun, but it really, this is what makes us better partners and better lovers, really, is being able to structure what we do to not only fulfill our needs, but to fulfill our partner's needs. Because if we're making our partner or partners feel like $1 million, they're going to want to make us feel like $1 million, and it self feeds. And the only way to do that is to have open, honest, and detailed conversations about it. So don't think of the debrief as being unsexy. It may not sound like all that much fun, but it really does help um, keep things going and keep things sparking because you uncover new fantasies, new ideas, all things together, and it builds trust. And the more you build trust, the more of those fantasies you can bring to life, and the better your scenes will be. So that is what I have this week on sort of planning and enjoying our Kingtastic times because let's face it, it's not always possible to have them be spontaneous. And sometimes our spontaneous ones can be amazing and hot. But if we're going to explore a fantasy or dive into something new, we do need to do our homework beforehand and plan it. So I hope these tips and tricks might help you as you plan your next Kinktastic adventure. And since it is warming up in my neck of the woods, please make sure if you have neighbors fairly close. Um, I live, in the city, so my neighbors aren't. Thankfully, I live in a very nice. Well, it's not very nice in terms of like I don't know what's his name, the head of Twitter and Tesla. It's not nice in that sense of the word neighborhood, but it's a wonderful neighborhood. If you've seen the TV show The Wonder Years, that would be the equivalent neighborhood that I live in. And so, yes, the neighbors are close, but they're not that close. But if you do leave the windows open, your neighbors will know that you are having a little bow chicka wow wow kinktastic time. So don't forget to close your windows when you're doing and you're planning and bringing your scenes to life, unless you do live in say a rural area where your neighbor's a mile away, you don't have to worry about that. Or if you neighbor happens to be kinky and they don't mind, then by all means, go for it. But yeah, I hope that helps as you go on your journey to bring things to life. And I do want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for making the time to listen to this lovely podcast. And to all of those who have been listening and following along for quite a while, I truly appreciate the investment of time that you make. And I also appreciate the feedback. So if you have feedback and thoughts for me, please go right ahead and scroll down and send me a message. Let me know what you thought. And speaking of that, I would really, really like it if you out there would share a few tips about planning scenes. What works for you? What you found doesn't work? If you have some ideas, once again, scroll down, send me some feedback. Let me know what has worked for you, what hasn't worked for you. And hopefully later this week, I will be sharing a little bit of excitement with you as well. So I'm looking forward to that. And with that, I want to say thank you again for listening. Please don't forget to tap the follow button so you get notified whenever there's a new episode of Chatting with the Lightkeeper, as it's possible there could be an unscheduled one that drops later this week with some exciting news. It's possible. Can't say for sure, but it's highly possible. And with that, I will wish everyone a great day and thank you again for the listen, and I will talk to you again soon.